The hard thing about playing the Commanders is their rookie quarterback. This kid is so different and special. If he gets hot, it's almost hard to tell what he can do. I mean, and he hurt the ribs. He struggled for several weeks. I think he's coming out of that now. Obviously, the Eagles should win this game, but they can't let Jaden Daniels get rolling.
That was Mike Mayock on the Believe in Eagles podcast. Anthony Armstrong is host of Believe in Commanders, former Washington wide receiver. He joins us now for today's Outside View. Our Outside View today brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, and installation for generations. Call 609-390-3907, online at broadlees.net. Jaden Daniels, how far has he come since the last time we saw him a month ago, where he seemed to be a little banged up in that game? Anthony, we bring you in on that conversation because, everybody was buzzing about Jaden Daniels, and the Eagles saw him and kind of kept him in check. But has he come back to the guy that he was before the Week 11 matchup?
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me. I do think Jaden is definitely closer to what you saw earlier in the season, coming off these last couple of wins. Finding a way to make some throws and getting back in rhythm with his receivers. Last time Philly caught him on a short week, coming off of a tough loss against Pittsburgh as well. So now this is full time. He's going to have a full week's rest and able to, focus on what Philly's going to do. And I expect him to have a better performance.
When you look at this Washington team now, they played Philly. That was a good game. It was in Philly, and then Philly, the big run by Barkley, it kind of broke away late to kind of pull away there. But that was a good game. They were leading that game late. How much has Washington grown off of that loss?
Man, I think when you had your leaders step up and Wagner and then Ertz and those guys just talking to those younger players and letting them know what the goal was now. They have something in front of them to play for, and 3 games left, big opponent this week with Philly. I think this team has grown a lot and then some maturity and once again find a way to win against New Orleans. I think they're primed. They're primed for what's in front of them, and they're going to take it like one game at a time and put their best effort on the field.
Well, when you look at it, this is a team that has not had a lot of playoff appearances in recent years. The pressure starts to get you a little bit, especially when you have a young quarterback. Is that a feeling that as you're getting later in the season and the Rams and the Seahawks are nipping on their ankles and they have to play Philly, is there pressure for Washington going into this game?
I think people may try to apply pressure, but the one thing about Jaden Daniels is that the guy is cooler than the other side of the pillow, as Stuart Scott would say. Like, the guy is calm, and I think the questions really were more on what was the coaching staff going to do. I think the biggest question was how does Cliff Kingsbury adjust in the second half of season? And he even said it before. He was like, shoot, I had too much going against Philly last time. It was a short week, so being able to come at him now with more time on my hands, so you'd expect to see him, show up with a better game plan.
Saquon Barkley's obviously going for a historic season here. He had a big game the last time against Washington. Heck, his whole career has been big against Washington. He has the 3rd most scrimmage yards against Washington than any opponent in the history of the NFL. So when he goes against Washington, you could generally pencil him in for about 140. Is he the guy this week that would worry you the most? Or after seeing Philly throw the ball finally last week, does that now enter a whole nother dimension for the Washington defense?
Yeah, I think that you have the perfect addition showing up right now with Marshawn Lattimore to help you with the running game, ironically enough, because you can go man-on-man with A.J. Brown, and then that allows you to bring a safety into the box. And now you're going to have to decide, are you going to run into some stacked box situations? And, if that's what you're going to need to do to stop Saquon Barkley. You can't go too high safety and think you're going to stop him. You saw last week there was some runs made by the Saints on Washington. So when you change the when you change the running back to Saquon Barkley, those runs that were 5 or 10 yards last week, they can get broken for 20, 30 yards or more. So you're definitely going to be able to challenge. But ironically enough, Marshawn Lattimore is going to help this run defense.
We're talking with Anthony Armstrong, Believe in Commanders podcast. It's the Eagles and Commanders Yeah, you bring in Latimer. He did not play the last time. He was not a part of that. But obviously, the Eagles have a lot of weapons on the field, so we'll see. It appears that Allen is not going to play in the game. How much does that kind of change the dynamics of their defense?
Man, you didn't have him coming in just yet, so you already know you're down one big dominating player in the middle. Joe Witt Jr. is going to be up for a challenge. See how you're going to handle Kellen Moore in this defense, this offense, really, and he's going to have to get creative. Find some other ways to create some pressure. Like I said, Jeremy Chin up there, Frankie Luvu's already been able to apply pressure on the quarterback and some timely run blitzes. So it's going to be a chess match that I'm looking forward to. Yeah,
and the one thing is Philadelphia last week, they kind of, there was a lot of drama down here. If you didn't notice, Anthony, there was a lot of drama about, A.J. Brown, what's wrong with the offense. He says passing, and then the whole place blew up, and they answered those critics. They had a big game through the passing game, and that kind of made people say, maybe they can throw the ball if they have to throw the ball. But if you are game planning for Philadelphia's offense, are you more concerned about their passing game, or are you more concerned about Barkley?
I'm concerned about Barkley because it's just wears down on you. It's just something that you think you have him bottled up for 3 quarters, and the next thing you know, it's a big fourth quarter. So it's something that can always hit you. But don't disrespect those receivers. I mean, 2 top receivers in the league. They can go anywhere else and be number 1 guys, Devontae and AJ. So you got to respect those guys. And the way the recent history has been between these 2 teams, AJ has been able to have success. But now that young fella is in LA, he's going to have a different matchup. And so how do you cover Devontae? How do you cover the tight end? Are you going to be able to roll some different looks out there for Jalen? So it's going to take a full team effort on that defensive side. I don't think you have one guy that's just going to shut the whole thing down. But you're going to have to play some games and take advantage of the opportunities when the ball find it your way.
All right. On the other side of the ball, you got Philadelphia's defense. What concerns you when you look at that defense? You got Jalen Carter, obviously up front. The pass rush is weird. They don't have that guy. Like, there is not that edge rusher. They just kind of been going all over the place. Is this a week? Because I think the Washington offensive line might have their hands full a little bit. This isn't the strong suit of the Washington football team, or the Commanders now. But is that Eagles pass rush something that you look at and wonder, how did they get there, or is it a legit concern?
Man, the names that you listed off, regardless if the stats aren't with there, you still got to pay attention to who they are. Coming off of those, few injuries for Washington, they may be at full speed, but it's always been a question mark throughout this season. So if you don't have to go back and drop back 30, 40 times, that's going to bode well for Washington. So I'm going to need the offensive line to get behind their pads. Cliff Kingsbury find a way to generate a running game. Find somebody else to catch the ball other than Terry McLaurin. Even though the last matchup, Terry only had 1 catch for 10 yards. That won't happen this game.
I was going
to happen again.
I was going to bring that up to you. They found a way to kind of keep him in check. It seems that they're moving him around the field a little bit more. Last time they matched up, he primarily lined up on the left side of the field, and he kind of got bracketed in the red zone there. And it seems that after that game, they've moved him around a lot more.
Yeah, they really did. And coming out of that bye week, a lot of motion and shifting, even in the no huddle with Terry last week. So I expect to see some more of that. Like, you have to find a way to get your guy the ball early. He's helping the offense get open, right? He's going to help that running game get open if they can have some success through the air. So somebody else has to show up. Noah Brown's down, but you got Jamison Crowder back, so he's a wily vet, going to be on the inside in the slot. So if he can get open against, DeJean, I'm looking forward to see that matchup too.
Well, I was going to say, you had Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. That's really changed the dynamics of this defense, last year, which was porous. Those 2 guys have really added. Then Zach Bond as the linebacker. You got Brian Robinson, who's always been kind of a pain in the butt for Philadelphia here. And Zach Ertz, I think he's another interesting matchup. He caught the touchdown in the game the last time they played, but that is one spot where you think, hey, can you get the Eagles in the middle of the field if Zach Ertz can be a big factor for Jaden Daniels this week?
Yeah, he had that. He went out of the game last week with a concussion, so I don't think I saw his name on the injury report. We'll see coming into the week, but it's all hands on deck. I mean, it's all hands on deck. I mean, Philly, you got to respect Philly. This is not an easy opponent. They're top of the division for a reason. And, it's going to take a full team effort, special teams included. Stress away, pinning them deep. Like it could be one of those slugfests where it's just low scoring, ugly football, but it comes down to the finer details at the end of it.
Well, and one of the things we were talking about is, Anthony, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders have not been in the playoffs the same year together since 1992. It's the last time they both were in the playoffs at the same time. So to have a game between these two teams this late in the season means so much. I mean, Philly's trying to get the 1 seed, win the division. Washington's trying to get into the playoffs. If they get in the playoffs, they could face each other. There's a really good chance they play again. It just really adds to the fact that these two teams haven't had a lot of history in the last almost 30 years.
Oh, I know it. It's unprecedented territory. Nobody on the Commanders team knows anything about it. These kids weren't even born whenever this team was last in the playoff, which is crazy to think. But it feels good, I can say, from the Washington side to actually be playing meaningful football right now. We normally be thinking about vacation, like what's coming up next. Now we're like, okay, you might get a game or two in January. You got to think 2 months of football left.
Well, I want to get
you think right now.
I want to get your take on that because you've covered this team throughout the last couple of years, and you take a look at the new ownership and how that has changed. And I say that with many people here are familiar with the ownership group, obviously, because they own the Sixers. And I want to get your take on how the ownership group has been perceived in Washington and the role of that change in ownership in the success on the field.
Man, when you say if you were to cut on a box fan and you could see a cloud literally move from over the top of Ashburn, Virginia, that's what it's been like. It's been refreshing because Josh Harris and crew have been all about doing things the right way. They're communicating with fans to get real feedback, and they actually give a damn about this process. And the fact that they were able to hit with the GM and then with players and coaches and then now on-field success. My goodness, they couldn't ask for anything better. So, I mean, Commanders fans are like pinching themselves a little bit, but they feel like it's real now. So I'm interested, though, because I was thinking about this yesterday, and how, with him coming from the 76ers, is this surprising to see him have success with the Commanders so quickly?
If you asked 50 different Sixer fans, you'd get 25 on one side, 25 on the other. There are 25 that would say, I like what he's done with the Sixers. They haven't won a championship, but, they went through the process. They spent a lot of money. They just haven't won ultimately. Then you have the other side that say, it's a scam artist. They lost on purpose. So it's a very polarizing ownership group because of how it started here. In Washington, it started right off the bat with success, where here in Philly, it started with 3 consecutive, historic losing seasons, almost purposely.
Okay, well then I get it. Y'all are probably halfway salty that he put some little extra cheating in. Yeah, I get that. I feel that.
It's a weird dynamic, and not to mention, Anthony, he also owns the Devils, which is the Philadelphia Flyers' biggest rival, really. So you've got the Eagles' one of their biggest rivals in Washington. He owns that team. Then he owns the Philadelphia Flyers' biggest rivalry, and then he owns a team in town here. So it's almost been this weird dynamic. That's why I was kind of interested to see how he was being received in Washington.
But he grew up a Washington fan. So this is Dan Snyder was a fan of the team, and then now Josh is a fan of the team, and his cohort is were fans as well. So now they're getting to do it the right way.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably more of a connection to it because this is his childhood team, and he wants to make sure it's done the right way. So.
That said,
interesting dynamic, but I'm glad he's hitting it over here.
Yeah, that said, I have kind of been more pro Harris in terms of I liked what they did. I liked that they had a plan to kind of try to get out of mediocrity. It has not worked to the success on the court. I will say it has been a grand slam home run off the court in terms of interest in the team. I mean, this interest in the Sixers was at an all-time high. Now it's starting to get a little rocky now with all the injuries and stuff, but not to mention it kind of coincided with has his interest gone more to the football team than the basketball team? There's been a lot of that conversation, but I like the fact that it has kind of maybe reignited Washington and Philadelphia. They haven't been in the playoffs together since 1992, and that might happen this year. How important is this game for Washington to make that happen?
Man, it's the next one is the most important one. This is paramount. Like, I don't even want to get to thinking about, well, if we lose, what other ways can you make it in? Just everything's right in front of you. Just take care of business against Philly.
Anthony Armstrong is host of Believe in Commanders on the Believe Podcast Network. It's Eagles-Commanders. They renew their rivalry this Sunday at 1 o'clock. You can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Anthony, it's always good to catch up with you. And, hey, might be a third meeting. We might have you back.
Hey, let's do it. I'm up for it.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you. There's Anthony Armstrong here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN.